Welcome to the Love Deep Lab podcast, helping you integrate sex, sexiness, sacredness, and science in your life and your bedroom. And now, your host, Dr. Stormy.
Hi, welcome to the Love Deep Lab podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stormy, and we're so glad to have you here again today, joining us, tuning in, watching, and listening. Today we have an awesome expert guest with us, and I can't wait to dive in with her. I'm going to introduce her here in a moment, but we are going to talk about fun things like sex positivity, kink, what the heck is a sex coach, how do you find one, and so much more. So I'm going to introduce our guest to you right now. As a certified sex coach and human sexologist, Dr. Celina Criss, she, her, helps individuals and couples explore their personal sexual landscapes with playfulness and curiosity. She believes that pleasure and sexual well-being are essential and that sex-positive cultures start at home. Dr. Celina is a Californian, married to a Bavarian, raising 2 kids in Germany, and still trying to learn German. She's a poly-committed BDSM practitioner, a pro-level scuba diver, and an occasional knitter. She is also the executive director of the World Association of Sex Coaches. So welcome, Dr. Criss.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stormy.
So happy.
It's so good to be here.
Yeah, so happy to have you here, tuning in from hot, humid Germany. Yes?
Yes, it is warm here today. I'm waiting for the thunderstorm.
Awesome.
A little relief.
To cool it all down. Well, we're so happy to have you here. And we're just going to, I love that bio. I love how we were just talking before we started recording about so many facets of you in your bio. It's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, all of us have different parts of us, right? And yet wherever we go, there we are. My dad used to say that. I don't remember who he's quoting, but...
It is such a beautiful one. It's so true. Well, so you and I share in that we are both sex coaches. So I would love to have you share, what the heck is a sex coach? How does someone get interested? How did you get interested in this work? And just start there.
Okay. So way back in the day when I had teeny tiny humans, I used to be a kindergarten teacher. And then I had teeny tiny humans of my own. And I realized I could either be a really awesome kindergarten teacher or I could be a really awesome mom. And I chose the momming because, they're my kids. I felt kind of responsible for them. And I was working with a career coach. And through our process, at one point, I looked at her and I was like, it would be so cool to do what you're doing, but around sex. And she's like, yeah, that would be such a fit. And I started Googling, and it was right around the time that Sex Coach U started. And so I signed up with them, with Dr. Patty Britton and Dr. Robert Dunlap, and I did their training, and I've actually been with them ever since. So sex coaching is, the way we teach it, is basically a combination of humanist sexology, or applied humanist sexology, and the skill set or the toolbox of life coaching. And we put these two together and we integrate them so that when we work with clients, what we get to do is have this really forward-focused approach to see, okay, well, where are you today and where do you want to be? And what are the steps in between to get from here to there? And so whichever coach you talk to is going to have a separate, their own unique approach and their area of focus. But generally, that's the idea, is to bring your desires.
Life coach meets sex coach, right? That is what sex coaching is. It's so beautiful, right? And I like to say what happens in the bedroom shows up in life, and what happens in life shows up in our bedroom. We don't have sex in a vacuum, and so it's so interrelated. So I completely agree, and also coach that way, that if we're looking at just sex in a very myopic, prescriptive way, we're missing so much more about how sexuality impacts life, relationships, parenting, all of the things.
All of it. It touches everything. It's such a core part of our being.
It's literally. It is. So
okay, maybe touches wasn't the right word.
I think it's the perfect word. It's the perfect word. So I wanted to ask you, we have a TikTok called Touchy Subjects, and we talk about touchy subjects, right? And it's been really just really inspiring and humbling and heartwarming and eye-opening how the level of vulnerability of the users and the questions and the comments. But one thing I get asked a lot on different videos is, well, sex isn't everything. Like you can have, you can be in a really great relationship without sex. And I just would love to hear your perspective on that.
About having a really great relationship without sex?
Mm-hmm.
Well, sure. How many of us are doing our best friend?
Yeah,
That
right.
would be a really awesome relationship without sex, or
Right.
any of our family members. Hopefully we have really fantastic relationships with them, but we're also not having sex with them because that would be weird.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I misunderstood you. Do you mean like a romantic relationship without sex?
Yeah. I think that's what that's what they're kind of posting. I was like, well, I love my husband, or I love my partner, I love my wife, but we don't have sex ever, or sexless. We're in a sexless partnership. And, I get asked a lot, like, well, can't you have a great romantic relationship without sex? And, my perspective on that is you can. I was in a mostly sexless marriage. That was a choice I made then. That is not a choice that I would make now. And to me, sex and sexuality is too important. But I just wanted to see what your thoughts are, because I get asked that a lot about sexless partnerships, and is sex the end all be all? And what if you don't have sex in your partnership?
Gotcha. Okay. So I get this question. When I get this question, it's usually because they're feeling it as a deficit, right? That people who bring this to me are saying, okay, it's never happening. How can I make this happen? Because we want it.
Yeah.
But I could also look at this from the perspective of, if the people who are in this relationship are not having sex and they're happy, then who's to say that's wrong? If it works for them. There are people where the desire for sexual touch isn't that great. They just don't feel like it. They don't want it. And yet they feel satisfied in every other aspect of their relationship. Is their communication good? Is their partnership solid? Are they sharing goals and treating each other with love and respect and care?
Right.
I think that would be important. So I would say, I guess, it's a problem if the people in the relationship say it is. And if they say it's great, it's great.
Totally. That was, beautifully said. It's so true. And I think my own personal experience, and that's what I will share if someone asks, is that like I said, I spent 10 years in a mostly sexless marriage, a low sex marriage. And I have no regrets on that. We created my child out of this partnership, and as I grew and he continued to grow, we parted ways, because for me, sex was too important to my primary relationship, to my romantic relationship. And that was my personal choice, and so I really appreciate your reflection that if it works for both people, great. If it doesn't, then there's so much healing and work and beautiful things that can be done to bring back sex and intimacy into partnership.
Right. Or there's other ways to configure a relationship. I work with a lot of couples or partnerships that are polyamorous in some way. They practice ethical or consensual non-monogamy. And so maybe there is a primary relationship that's relatively sexless or totally sexless, but then the partner who does have that need gets to outsource, for lack of a better word, that part, and form another bond with one partner, 5 partners, whatever this constellation of people agrees to and says is safe for them and okay for them. Then you can have these constructions where, okay, there's this relationship, and then on this side, 1 or 2 or more other partners.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, right? There's so many relationship paradigms and constructs for relationship. And kind of back to what you said originally, is if it works for the people in the partnership, the multiple people in the partnership, or persons in the partnership, great. And then you could foster safety and connection and intimacy and sexiness and all of those things. But I really appreciate that, because there's such a as you are very well aware of, there's monogamy is the only way, and then there's polyamory is the only way. And I'm like, can we just be much more open-minded, open-hearted, sex positive about what works for you, what works for your partner or partners, and really moving from there. So I really appreciate that reflection.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree with you. I think anyone who's not involved in the relationship has nothing to say about it unless they were asked by the people in the relationship.
It's so true. It's so
So,
true, and and it's such an interesting thing about like, like poly's the only way or monogamy's the only way. It's like, well, what? No, there's so many beautiful relationship paradigms. And for me, like in
mhm.
my partnership, my current partnership, I practice conscious monogamy. That's our paradigm that we're practicing at this time. And it's really been a beautiful journey from default monogamy that I was earlier in my life into a conscious practice of monogamy, having explored different relationship paradigms, so that's been my
Mhm.
journey. Yeah,
Awesome. Oh, that is so good
beautiful.
that you find that way where you want to be together with your partner. I believe ultimately, if we're treating each other with mutual care and respect and nurturing and feeding our energy into that shared space, then whatever you create together, it's okay. So long as everybody's
Yeah,
they're getting their needs met, you get your needs met, your partner gets their needs met, it's
totally.
good.
Beautiful. Yeah, totally. Right. And let's leave the I don't know, fantasy or I don't know, Disney fairy tale messaging that one person can fulfill and meet all of your needs at all times. I mean, it's just ridiculous. That amount of pressure on a partnership is burdensome.
Crazy. It is. It is.
Yeah.
Like, I know if I was expected to be all the things for my partner, it would just be, bleh. No, I can't. Because there's got to be some space for me to
I
be me and
cannot.
do my own thing. Like, I just can't. And so I don't expect
Totally.
them, I have multiple partners. I can't
Yeah.
expect any of them to be all the things. And in fact, I don't. I love it that, when I go hang out with this one, the chances are we'll go diving. If I'm hanging out with this one, we're probably going to go sailing. Okay, I tend to collect water sports. Okay, I'm not going to say I tend to collect other water. I don't know. I hang out in lakes, in the ocean. Let's just say it like that.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. So tell me a little bit about, so you are the executive director of the World Association of Sex Coaches. So what is the World Association of Sex Coaches? Why did you get it? Why was it formed? Why did you get involved? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, thinking of where to start. So,
Mm-hmm.
sex coaching is a relatively new field, right? And sex coaches didn't have a professional home, so to speak. There was no professional organization, no one checking on credentials, no one kind of screening, say, okay, these professionals are professional, they're trained, they're legitimate. So WASC was formed to create that home for sex coaches, for certified sex coaches, for people who have done the training, who have the letters behind their name or the certificate on the wall. Because since it's an unregulated field, as you probably also know, there's people who are like, oh, I'm going to be a sex coach, without necessarily having that training or
Mm-hmm.
that degree of professionalism. They're like, oh, well, I kind of do this. I like to talk about this. This is what I'm going to be. And
Yeah.
so WASC formed out of a need for that. Or I remember when I first did my training and I graduated, when I talked to people about my work and I'd say, I'm a sex coach, they'd be like, what's that? Is that a thing? And so this was another thing that, because I would say, yeah, actually it is a thing. And they'd be like,
Uh-huh.
well, what kind of thing? Like, are you in the bedroom watching people do it? And I'm like, no,
Uh-huh.
I am not. I mean,
Right.
we could probably negotiate that, but it would also probably be outside my professional ethical bounds.
Yeah,
But I could
totally.
probably refer you to someone. But,
Uh-huh, for sure.
everyone has their way and that's fine. And that's good.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, so WASC was developed as this professional association and home for sex coaches. And so it serves two needs. One, it provides a space for sex coaches around the world to connect with one another, because sometimes we feel really isolated in our own corners of wherever we happen to be. And so to have an organization that we can tap back to and call home, and we can join the webinars via SCU, or we're starting to develop networking events, things like that, where people can find each other and know that they're not alone, or to refer clients to other professionals. You know, if someone comes to you and has a question that's outside your skill set or your knowledge area or your comfort zone or your whatever, you can look in there and say, oh, you know, I can't help this, but I can send you to someone, because that referral network is really important to us as professionals. For people on the client side, it's a resource to find someone on their own, you know, someone who's local to them or someone who addresses their specific need. Because especially since COVID, almost all of us work online now. And so, you know, you can find someone around the world in a time zone that's going to work for you, who addresses the things that you want to talk about. And so the directory provides that as well. And so there's it's like a two-sided kind of thing. It works for the professionals inside, and it works for the people who are looking for us.
Totally. Yeah, it's really, I'm so grateful as a sex coach to have found you all, to be a member, to, you know, to have been approved to be a member. It really, because for all the reasons you just listed. And I love thinking of it as helping the coaches and the professionals, and then also helping the clients and the customers to find skilled professionals in their area. I really appreciate the referral piece of, like, if this is not my zone of genius, or is not what I like, lights me up, or, you know, like I said, or beyond my comfort zone or skill set, I have a place to go to find vetted coaches that it is their skill set and it is their zone of genius. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And actually, I forgot to say that vetting is important for the clients also. They know that if they come to our directory, every single one of those professionals has been checked out, and their credentials have been confirmed, and their skills have been confirmed, you know, so they know that they're not talking to someone who woke up one day and said, I'm going to be a sex coach. But they're talking to people who have really gone through rigorous trainings. And there's a variety out there, you know, what's possible. We have people who do somatic work. We have people who do talk-only work. We have people who do things specifically around parenting and pregnancy, or BDSM, or Tantra, or Christian marriages. We have a couple of coaches who are focused specifically on that, you know, so there's like something for everybody, but none of us can be something for everyone. The same way we can't be all the things for our partners.
True. I mean, I know, it's amazing. And as I am a sexual being, I'm a sexual woman, as you know, as are, in my opinion, all beings are sexual beings. And then we you know, my sexuality has evolved and changed in my own life, but also what lights me up to train in and be excited about and support my clients in. And so I think it's just such a beautiful, you know, journey, like this evolution within ourselves as a sex coach. And, you know, this leads me right to my next question. So I think there's this, I don't know, misconception or hilarious, you know, misperception that sex coaches are like the sexiest, you know, most amazing beings ever, and having fabulous mind-blowing, time-bending sex all the time, like every day, multiple times a day. So what would you say to that? How do you speak to that? Of like, you know, what do you get? Like, if you're like, ooh, she's a sex coach, like kind of excited and kind of intimidated all at once, or how do you work with that in your world?
I don't know. Part of me is tempted to show you my shoes today.
Please do. Oh, yes.
Wait a second. I just kicked one off. If there's any decent way to do this.
Amazing.
Without
beautiful.
Like falling out of my chair. Like, without little shorts on and like knee-high stockings.
Ooh, so beautiful. Yes. Yes.
So, you know, some days we are kind of sexy.
Totally. Yep.
I can't believe I just flashed my legs.
That's amazing. I love it. It's perfect. For those of you just listening, you just missed out. Dr. Criss just showed us her gorgeous legs, her stockings, and her super hot heels. So you can check it out. You can check it out on YouTube.
My legs will be famous on YouTube. I love it. Life goal right there.
Totally.
But no, in all seriousness, sex coaches are humans too. And some days we have really fantastic, mind-blowing sex, and some days it's kind of meh. And other days it just doesn't even happen.
Yep.
Yeah. And this happens no matter what kind of sex we're into.
Yeah.
It can be awesome. It can be
Yeah, totally. And I so appreciate that. It's like, and also like for in my work of focusing on sacred sexuality, it's also like, this is a practice. This is not, at least my journey was not to arrive like, woo, ta-da, I'm this like perfect lover or, full giver or full receiver. It's like, no, there's days where I rock it and there's days where I'm like, what is going on that's keeping me from my pleasure or keeping me from surrendering into my orgasm. And it's like an opportunity to really reflect and self-confront, to continue to grow as a human being. But I appreciate that. It's like, and sex is a practice. Like it's for me, I look at it as a practice. This is something some days I'm deeply in my practice. Other days I'm peripherally in my practice or not at all. And I get to come back to my practice,
Yeah,
beautiful. I love that. And some days you get to rock the stockings.
I don't know. My stilettos help me think. I have a tendency to put them on when I'm working.
I know.
So.
And they are very hot.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Beautiful.
But yeah, sex is like, it's almost like breathing, right? Or a tide. Some days it's really in, some days it has its flow, hey? And again, whatever kind of sex we're having, is it tantric? Is it missionary? Is it kinky? Is it, and kinky as defined by us, because one person's kinky is another day, guys, like Wednesday afternoon.
Totally. Amazing.
But, yeah, it comes and it goes and it's fun. I don't know.
It sure is. It sure is a beautiful journey. And I think what's, something that I'm really passionate about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is how do we have sex be part of our growth as a human, as a lover, as a friend, as a parent, not separating sex from spirituality or from personal growth or human development. I mean, you started talking about that, how, your training and your background, but how, and how related sex is to so many realms of our life that extend beyond the bedroom.
Well, if our sexual expression and our sexual energy is part of, it's like the core of who we are. I like to think of it as sitting somehow very, very close inside, like at the core, because it's where we meet ourselves and each other in bliss. Sex is a way of being vulnerable with one another, of opening ourselves up, of allowing ourselves to be seen in a uniquely authentic way. And it can show up in different flavors or different moods or different expressions, but it's still part of us. And if that is somehow broken or not working, we see this in our practices so often, where people are carrying around shame of something. And often it connects back to our sexuality, right? And it kind of has this ripple effect into other things, because I'm feeling ashamed about something. Maybe I dress a certain way, projects a certain image out into the world, or dictates how I interact with people. Maybe I don't speak up for myself. Maybe I don't claim my power out in the world, and assert who I am and my needs, be it in a relationship with my partner, with my family, with my boss, or, just anyone. So, that's one aspect of it. There's other parts where if there's injury or trauma, that might ripple out in similar ways. It might have an impact on how we do things. Our sexual expression, it's like that core piece,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not the only way to see it. It's just, this is my porthole view on
Yeah.
it, right? I mean,
Totally.
you ask someone else, you're going to get a different answer.
Yeah, that's what my son likes to say. Mom, sex is your favorite subject to talk about. It is not everyone's favorite subject, you know?
That's why we get together and we talk, because we're like, ooh,
I know. It's
speak
like,
out
oh,
now.
this is so great. Yeah, totally. Beautiful. Okay, so this actually leads me to ask you, every guest we have on the podcast, we ask for what we call sexy homework for our listeners or our watchers. So here we're talking about, I love that, sex as a core of us, sex as part of our growth and development. We touched on, polyamorous relationships. We touched on BDSM and kink, and like, I love what you said. One person's kink is another person's Wednesday afternoon. It's like, so how could our listeners, can you offer us a few practices that you would recommend for, I don't know, what's coming up for me is like a way to kind of start to feel more sexy, start to feel more alive in your being, or start to, explore sexuality. I mean, that's a broad question, but just anything that comes up for you is like, these are good practices to get your like toe wet or your whole damn body wet,
Ooh, let me think, because I did come up with a couple beforehand.
Yeah, good.
Nerdy prepared girl here, but to get in touch with yourself and with your core, I would take time to really look in to your own self, and check out, okay, well, how do I feel today? And take yourself on a sensory journey, pick a couple of senses and just really focus on them one at a time. So a really obvious one would be touch. Just play with touches, and you can play with your own body, stroking, scratches, anything, or see, okay, I've got this thing here. What does it feel like if I run it on my body? And just tune into that and enjoy it and luxuriate. And you could also do temperature, and you could combine it with food. I'm thinking of cucumbers right now, probably because it's really hot in here. But if I think about them, that coolness on my tongue, but what would that feel like if I laid them on my arm, if I put them on my chest, if I made a line of cucumbers down the center of my body, and just laid in it? And wouldn't it be spectacular if I had a fan? I just felt that. Right?
It's so amazing.
That
yes, totally.
So, but you could do this with music. You could do it with something that smells really good. I will share with you and your audience. My mother says I'm a sniffer. I know what my loved people smell like, and when I greet them and when I say goodbye to them as we hug, and my family, we're a bunch of huggers, I'll kind of sniff them. I want to know what they smell like, and I keep it with me. And when I miss my family, I remember what each of them smell like. Or if someone around here is wearing the same perfume as one of my tias, for example, I go, is my tia Cici here, or something like that, because it evokes something. And we can do the same thing with our partners. I actually had an experience in college where this guy I was dating wore the same cologne my dad wore when I was a kid. He hadn't worn it in years, but it was like maybe third date or something. He's expecting some good times, right? Because we're like 20 and those were the rules.
Third date. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Third date. It's happening. And I could not get into it all night. Yeah. Like he keeps coming close and I'm like scooching away and he's like, babe, what's up? And it took me until the next day to realize I couldn't do this because you smell like my dad.
Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. It's so true.
It was crazy.
So
anyway,
true.
So such a tangent. But the point is, if we can tune into that sensory information and notice what is important to me, what is it that feels good to me, what's attractive, what is erotic, what is romantic, what is, and these are all different flavors, right?
Right.
What is familiar and warm and familial, and what is delicious and sexy and
totally so beautiful.
Get in there.
I love that. I love the sensory journey piece, and the picture you painted for all of us. I mean, really, like, but I also love that you said like luxuriate in it, like really settle into it, like really gift yourself the time to drop in. That's such a beautiful practice. So
Yes,
beautiful.
I love that.
Awesome.
Like, gift it to yourself.
Amazing.
Have it.
It's so good.
If you want to invite your
So-
partner along for the ride and do them too, why not? You can both share this journey. Have a whole group of buddies,
so
but
true.
at least start with yourself. Got to start with you first.
And I also really appreciated that reflection, because it's so easy to, like, for all of us to externalize our pleasure or externalize our orgasm, instead of like reclaiming it, that reclamation of like, I'm fully and wholly and beautifully and magically responsible for my pleasure, and that sovereignty in that. So I really appreciate that reflection too. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so I wanted to, before we kind of move to close, I love to do like a speed round of questions for our guests. So Dr. Criss, are you ready?
Yes, let's do this.
You're in your heels. You're ready. You're ready to go. So
I'm good to go. I'm going to assume my Superman pose. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. The 3 pillars of our podcast are sex, science, and sacredness. So just as a way to kind of build intimacy with our guest, with our expert guest. So what feels like sexiest for you right now in your life?
My heels, because I can feel them right now.
That's amazing.
And the cucumbers I was just imagining, because damn, that's going to be nice.
Yeah. I know, especially since it's so hot and humid.
It's so humid. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, totally. Beautiful. So heels and sensory delights feels really sexy for you. Beautiful. And how about like science-wise? You're a brain nerd like I am. And so in the realm of sex and relationships, what right now scientifically is like lighting you up, where you're reading about it and studying it and incorporating it?
Okay, so I was reading an article that was just published the other day, I think in the Journal of Sex Research. It's all about playfulness, and they're mapping adult playfulness and looking for correlations with that and BDSM. And I haven't gotten to the very end and their conclusions, but it does seem to be pointing towards people who have a high rank on the scales of playfulness, like intellectual playfulness, what was it? Other oriented playfulness, it was like owls or something, whimsical. And I'm losing the last one. But, people who have these scores, these higher rankings in their personality, like they have these indicators or however they're classifying them, are having also tendencies towards sexual playfulness, which is how I think of BDSM often. It's just sort of taking all of the playfulness, the silliness, the willing to do role plays, the drama, and very intentionally harnessing it and bringing it into the bedroom. Like, okay, let's do this.
That's so fun.
It's just so yummy.
It's so yummy, and you just like,
yeah,
please do. And totally, I'm like salivating for it, but you just like light up on the screen about it, right? It's so beautiful. That's amazing, awesome. Well, and I'm all for playfulness in all realms of our life, and definitely in sex. And so that's super cool. Okay, and then the third pillar is sacredness. So in your life right now, what feels sacred to you?
Connection with my lovers, with my family, with humans, with the fish that I dive with, like to wave hello to them. That space where we connect. That's sacred. That's beautiful.
It is. That's so beautiful. Totally. And isn't it just even feel more deeply sacred in these emerging post-COVID times? It just connection was so blunted for so long. So I can really connect with that too. Connection, beautiful.
How phenomenal is it when we meet someone new now and you like get to know them and it's like, ooh.
I know. And hug them. Right. And like the hug my nervous system is still attenuating to that, of like not having hugs feel dangerous. And I'm working on it, but it's like, it's so messed up how that was so imprinted of like, touch is dangerous and, sneezing is dangerous. And like, it's so interesting.
It's so crazy. I mean, we're still checking each other out. Like, okay, are we fist bumping? Are we waving hi? Are we people who hug?
Totally. Totally.
But on the other hand, it's excellent because now we're all like really practicing our negotiation and consent muscles. Yes.
Totally.
Sex educator here is so happy.
I was going to say, said like a sex educator. Yes. Beautiful. It's so true. But hugging feels so good. Again, I'm a hugger as well. And oh my God. I mean, I literally can viscerally right now feel my first hug as, here in the United States, where we were kind of emerging, coming back out into the world, into connection. That wasn't my partner. That wasn't my son. That wasn't my like parents. And I literally like just melted into the hug. I for sure hugged for like an inordinate amount of time because I was just like, my body was just so happy to hug,
I've noticed that too, because I've trained myself to not be a super long hugger because I could hug for days, right? So I'm like, no, and it's not like I'm counting it off in my head or anything like that. It's not quite that weird. But when I've met up with buddies lately, that initial hug, like they've really gone in for the hang, like they've come in for the cuddle, and I've noticed this. I'm like, all right, let's let's hug,
totally.
Let's just melt into this and enjoy this moment together because I think we are all like starving.
Yeah, totally.
Starving for
That's
that
really
touch.
it is very sacred. Yeah. Well, and how can our listeners and watchers find you, follow you, learn more about all of your offerings and what you're up to in the world?
So my website is delightfulmischief.com. Of course, I picked hard words to spell, but there it is. Delightful Mischief. And I am Celina at delightfulmischief.com. And you can also find me through the World Association of Sex Coaches.
Amazing. So great. Well, thank you so much.
Too.
Yeah, totally. So that's awesome. I will make sure I put all of that in the show notes for our listeners and our watchers. And thank you, Dr. Criss, for joining us today.
And thank you so much for having me, Dr. Stormy. It's been such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and thank you to our listeners and our viewers for tuning in and for being brave and opening your hearts to love deep.